Okay.
Okay.
All
So
right.
let's start over. Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody. We can. I will not reintroduce Lou again. We'll talk more about his career.
I think you should reintroduce
Oh,
Lou in
okay.
case
Lou
somebody's
Jones,
listening later. We have a
photographer.
lot of people who don't listen tonight. So start over. Just go right over what you did already. Hi, Justin and everybody. Thanks for bearing with us here.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, Bob Frank. And my first question to you is, what was your first camera?
Oh, I believe my godfather gave to me a brownie way back when I was in Cub Scouts. I think was my first, but I had a roommate in college who gave me an Exacta, and I think I was a sophomore, and that was my first real camera that attracted me to photography, to real photography, and then the rest is history.
And jazz music, when did that come into your life?
Well, I started listening to music and jazz way back when probably I was in high school, but I really got into it in college and started chasing around all kinds of musicians and all kinds of little dungeons and church basements and things like that, and listening to a lot of different music. And then, of course, in those days we had big LPs, and with my father's help, I started collecting. The jazz photographs, the modern jazz quartet and orchestra, and John Coltrane, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. So we're going to start this evening with Milt Jackson.
Absolutely. Well, I sort of talk about the long road to becoming a jazz photographer, and I put this up because I met Milt way back in the days. There are probably a couple of people in the audience who have actually know about the Jazz Workshop in Paul's Mall. Anyway, he was playing in those venues back in the day, and but I sort of got attracted to the photography because I would go to the shows and realized that I had no idea who the artists were, even though I had listened to the music for years and I knew the music. I didn't know what they looked like. And there were a number of, I've told this story many times, there were a number of photographs on the walls in the Jazz Workshop that I was attracted to, and every time I went down there, I would get up close to another one. But I realized one day, going to see a band, that I had no idea who the person was that I was there to see. All the people on the front of the stage played the same horns, and I didn't know what he looked like. And I said, this is a problem. I'm a photographer. I've got to do something about that. And so I started to photograph jazz musicians. And so I put this Milt Jackson photograph because this was my mechanism. I would go to the shows, listen to their music, and then at some point during the show, I would stalk them and convince them to let me photograph them, but in a venue that I was controlling, in my studio, backstage, outside, in their hotel room, et cetera, et cetera. And this was a studio of my mentor in downtown Boston, and I spent almost the entire day with Milt Jackson in the studio photographing him, and got many, many, many great photographs of him at the height of his career.
And again, what year was that, roughly?
Oh boy, I would say this was probably 1974.
Okay.
That's a long time. All of you people listening in there weren't even alive in those days. But this series goes way, way, way back.
and you chose Divertimento.
Yes, 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 yes. I started listening, like I said earlier. I said that my early introductions to the music, the jazz music that I was really appreciating in a very, very different way, goes all the way back to Modern Jazz Quartet, of which Milt Jackson was a member, and it was an album that I would love to have now, but I don't think it's in print, but it was called Modern Jazz Quartet and Orchestra, and I believe this is from that.
So feel free to chat, ask questions, but right now let's listen to some music.
Well, you have to understand that my training in music was very classical, and when I heard modern jazz quartet integrate into classical music, especially that if you heard that wonderful vibraphone introduction right in the beginning of the music, was when I started to listening jazz really seriously. But then we have now, I believe, Bill is putting up Les McCann, and the reason I sort of put that there is because he was also in. I met him also at the. This was at Paul's Mall, which is right across the hall from the Jazz Workshop, and I convinced him to let me photograph one of his rehearsals. So this is not in performance. I'll speak to that in just a minute, but he's rehearsing, so he's actually talking to his colleagues there with his bandmates, and this was one of the few times I used a sort of a trick filter. Someone asked about the Milt Jackson photograph was before this, which was in the studio. In those days, I was learning. I was just starting out, and I was learning using strobes. I was using big power packs and umbrellas and things like that so that's how the Milt Jackson photograph, and that was done with 35 millimeter. Although in those days I was shooting mostly large format and medium format, but to drive Bill crazy, to go back to the Les McCann photograph, I was using 35 millimeter, and I wasn't using strobe. Those were the stage lights, and I was attracted to them, and I was using a star filter, and something I would probably never do or hardly ever do it again. But can you show the whole thing? Is that because that's cropping it? Anyway, so I would, and the wonderful thing about Les McCann was that I was able to meet with him almost every time he came back. He came back almost every year to Boston for a while, and I would have dinner with him, at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning at one of the clubs, one of the restaurants downtown. But he was one of the few people that I really got to know fairly well.
Okay, I think we have Les's photo on now.
Okay. So you see how I've used this starburst filter, which is sort of a tricky little thing that mostly amateurs use. But in those days, as I was just beginning, I was experimenting with a lot of different techniques, and since there was so many different colored lights, I was trying to integrate that. And I actually still use this photograph, so because it does work, and I think it does work, but I probably wouldn't do that anymore. And Les became a really good friend. Like I said, we would have these wonderful meals, and he would order 2 steaks. He would order 2 complete steak dinners and devour them right in front of me. I didn't have any money in those days, but being in the presence of somebody as wonderful as Les McCann, I coughed up everything I had in my pocket to pay for his meals.
Okay, and what song have you selected?
I think it's compared to what is, probably the one song that everybody knows that he did. It was really, everybody asked him to do that. So I think we're going to pop that up now.
push and shove. Possession is the motivation that is hanging up the goddamn nation. Looks like we always end up in a rut. Everybody now trying to make it real compared to what? Come on, baby. Slaughterhouses are killing hogs. Twisted children are killing frogs. Poor dumb rednecks rolling logs. Tired old ladies kissing dogs. I hate the human love of that stinking mud. I can't use it. Trying to make it real compared to what? Come on, baby, now. President, he's got his war. Folks don't know just what it's for. Nobody gives us a rhyme or reason. Half of one doubt, they call it treason. With chicken feathers all without one nut. God damn it, trying to make it real compared to what? Suck it to me. Church on Sunday, sleeping nod, trying to duck the wrath of God. Preachers filling us with pride. They all trying to teach us what they think is right. They really got to be some kind of nut. I can't use it. Trying to make it real compared to what? Mother, baby. Bee and where's that honey? Where's my God and where's my money? Unreal values, a crass distortion. Unwed mothers need abortion. Kind of brings to my old young King Tut. He did it now, trying to make it real compared to what? Larry Benedict, Benny Bailey, Eddie Harris.
Wow. Les McCann and Eddie Harris live at Montreux.
Yeah, there was just as we have just talking back, that it was transformative for me. That song was a big deal in those days.
And as I said, for me as well. I guess we both came to it around the same time in the early 1970s.
Right.
And I haven't listened to it in so long, I did not realize that Benny Bailey was on the date. But I guess, yeah, Benny lived in Europe at the time.
Oh.
And we were talking about he played a lot with Charles Mingus in the 1970s. Does anyone have any questions about the photograph, about the music, about Lou?
Well, we can go on to the next photograph. I hope it's Betty Carter.
It is Betty Carter.
Excellent.
Let me just...
She was a real realization about, for me, probably more than most of the vocalists that I listened to in those days, and really used her voice as an instrument. And we often hear about vocalists that do that, but she was really just completely changed the way I listened to singers from that moment on. I was trying to be a singer in college, in bands, and in after college also, and so I picked up a fair amount. But this is a photograph. The process of chasing these artists in the clubs, a lot of different clubs that I chased them, and I had to develop a technique I'll talk about later about how I chased them and getting a few minutes with them to convince them to let me photograph in an environment that was not in the club. And it was such a painful process to do that I had to try to form other ways to get these candid, with quotes around it, with finger quotes around it, photographs of the musicians. And so I heard that Betty Carter was in town and thought to go and photograph her, but I also heard that she was doing a record signing at, in those days, I think it was called Strawberries, which was on Boylston Street in Boston. And so I showed up at the huge record store, and she was there signing albums. And so she got up, and the store gave her and said, pick out any record you want. So she was walking around choosing records, and so this was a photograph that I photographed of her. I asked her permission. She gave me it, and I spent several hours with her as she was signing, and this was the result. I got a lot of different kinds of pictures, but this was the result, the one that I really liked, of her appreciating her fellow artist.
And before we go to the music, any questions?
Lou, do you remember where she was? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I lost
We
some of
lost
you.
Justin.
Oh, Lou, do you remember? Next, I'm bowing out. I want to hear the other.
Okay, hold on one second. Let's get the
I didn't
music.
get all of the questions. Sorry.
Do you remember where she was gigging at that time?
You know, that's a good question. I don't. I don't remember, because I thought for a while that it might have been the Jazz Workshop, but I believe you're right. It might have been somewhere other than the Jazz Workshop, and the reason I chased her into the record store was the fact that I might not get an opportunity to get close to her at the venue that she was playing, but I don't remember. Honestly, don't remember. Do anybody remember Strawberries? They were a huge record company for a while in Boston. There's no such thing as record companies. I mean, record stores anymore. But so she was picking out Errol Garner, and I was really impressed with that.
I remember Strawberries.
Yeah, good.
Okay, let's listen to her sing
Okay.
A song about where we are this time of year, New England.
Yes, the winters are cold, but the folks got hearts of gold in New England. Sure, the summers are hot, but that sea breeze hits the spot in New England. And in the fall, a familiar story is retold by the red and gold trees. Not King Solomon and all his glory was as fabulous as one of these. Apple cider, fresh clams, maple syrup and homemade jams. That's New England. How my lonely heart calls for those winding gray stone walls in New England. And in the spring, at each crack of dawn, seems like angels sing as each new day is born. 'Cause New England is heaven, and heaven is my home. And in the spring, at each crack of dawn, seems like angels sing as each new day is born. 'Cause New England is heaven, and heaven is my home.
The great Betty Carter. Next artist. Who's our next artist here? Hello, hello. We're going to Dizzy Gillespie now. Let's see, Justin, before her regular appearances in Boston. Yeah, she was a phenomenal player. Just great. Great player.
If somebody's mentioning Arnie Cheatham, I went to his wake funeral just the other day. We've lost another local great jazz musician in Arnie Cheatham. He was a good friend also. I photographed him many, many, many times. But this is, not to be pedantic, but this is Dizzy Gillespie, and this is exactly what I was mentioning about how the process was so incredibly painful. He was playing in Washington, D.C. at the time. I was home with my parents for one of the holidays, and Dizzy was playing in Georgetown, in one of the clubs in Georgetown, and I convinced my father to drive me down to the club. And I pulled off because I had been doing it so often. I pulled off and I went up, and the bouncer said, "No, you can't come in unless you pay." I said, "No, no, 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 no. All I want is to talk to him for a few minutes and to ask him if I can take his picture." I was in Washington, D.C., like I said, and the bouncer said, "Absolutely not." And I said, "Oh, just give me, during the break, just give me a few minutes with him. That's all I need. That's all I need." And the bouncer, so I stood out there. My father kept the car running the whole time I was waiting to get into the club, which was quite a while. And he took a break, and the bouncer, that's real love when your father sits there in the club waiting, sits there in the car waiting for you that entire time. And I went in, rushed in, picked a moment, and got him. I don't know how it happened. It was just pure luck. Got him and was able to talk to him for a few minutes. And I said, "I want to take your picture." And he was surrounded by his sycophants and all the fans and everything. And I said, "I wanted to take your picture." And he said, "Oh, go take all the pictures you want." I said, "No, no, 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 no. The bouncer's going to throw me out in a few minutes. I need you to. He said, "Well, where do you want?" I said, "Well, I'll do it anyway. I'll do it in your hotel room." And so this is in his hotel the next morning, the next day. And I went in there, and this was available light. Somebody mentioned that about this was available light. I literally took him all the way over toward the window, and was using window light, a lot of that sort of classic painterly style. And he asked if he could smoke. He was asking me if he could smoke in his own. I said, "Be my guest," and he lit up a cigar, which I thought was quite annoying at the time, until he took a couple of puffs and blew out the smoke, and I realized that was the shot, and so I photographed him both in black and white and in color, and got this photograph that's been used many, 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 many times, and was able to drag his trumpet, his famous trumpet, over toward him. But like I said, most of the photographs that I'm showing you tonight are non-performance, so that I was able to get a little bit of the personality, a little bit of the character of the person, of the musician, of the artist that I was shooting.
Lou, were those handheld?
Good question. Excellent question. No, this is probably, I do a weird thing. I have been doing it for a long, long time. Again, I've been making a living at photography for longer than most of you have been alive. So I was probably using a monopod, which I carry on my camera bag all over the world. And I have, this monopod is, again, probably older than most of you. And I've been using that. So in those days, you needed a really steady platform. This is a long time ago. This is back in the 70s. So, the ISOs were very, very controlled, and the shutter speeds and the f-stops were very, very controlled. So we had to be exactly on. And so it was probably using a monopod at the time.
Victoria asked, was he playing at Blues Alley when you caught him?
No. What's the other club that's down there in Georgetown? There's another. I'm gonna blank. I'm blanking. You guys are scratching my head really badly here. This is 35, 40 years ago. But it was in Washington, D.C., and I think Victoria may have even met my father, so she knows exactly who I'm talking about.
We'll go to some Dizzy Gillespie.
Excellent. Excellent.
My apologies. That was a live recording from Birdland, Dizzy Gillespie and John Coltrane, Congo Blues. Any questions?
It can't be John Coltrane.
It is.
It can't. I promise you. Bill, I will give you,
This is the record it came from. With-
what year is that? Okay, what year is that? Wow, I stand corrected.
No, it's around 1952, 1953.
Really?
Yeah. And he performed with Dizzy for a good bit of time. And
Completely different style.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a revelation. Thank you. I'll check that one out.
yeah, I had a conversation with John Carlo. So, the Congo Blues is on the Dial Sessions, and it's one of the rare Dizzy and Bird pieces that
Yes,
is not on anything else that Charlie Parker did.
right.
So we went down the wormhole looking for another version of Congo Blues, and this is the one we found.
Wow. On what label?
A no label. This is the record. It's one of these Train's First Ride, 1951. Oberon 5100.
Thank you. Wow. Interesting.
Another gem from Stereo Jacks.
Irreplaceable.
Okay. Let's see who we're going to look at next. Let me find. We're going to I need about 6 hands to do this now. So I think I told this story at the beginning, but this was the first piece of blues that I saw of Miles Davis that just floored me. And just think of the thousands of photos we've seen of Miles. Many stage.
This is probably the most sold photograph that I have in my entire collection, believe it or not. I've sold
several signed and edition photographs. But I've told this story, and so I'm sorry for those people who are listening in who have heard this story often. But this was a major breakthrough for me. I had a mentor. I've never worked for anybody. I've never had a job, never worked a day in my life. And so I went into the mentor who I worked in his lab I went in every day and just helped him do things. I was learning the business of photography. I was so thirsty for, anyway, his assistant, as I came in that day, said, "Hey, Lou, there's a jazz musician in my brother's gym. He's working out in my brother's gym." And he just came in, and he says he's down there now. And I said, "Oh, that's nice. That's nice." He said, No, he's really famous. And he said, who is he? Who is he? I said, "I have no idea who you're talking about." He said, "Well, give me a couple of names. It's very famous." So I listed 4 or 5 people I thought might be playing in Boston at that time. And just as a complete jest, I said, "Oh, Miles Davis." He said, "That's him." And before he said the word him, I was out the door with my camera bag going to the gym, which was in the North End, right across from the Boston Garden. Anyway, I ran up these rickety, nasty, steep stairs in this nasty little gym, and got all the way up to the top. And there was this enormous mesomorph standing in the front of the door, saying, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm going in to. He said, "You can't come in here." And I said, No, I heard that Miles Davis was in here, and I wanted to photo. He says, "Miles is in here, but you're not getting in here, you know." And I said, No, please let me. I want to photograph. He said, No. He said, "Go away." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. Can I just ask him if he give him the choice of whether I'll just take 2 minutes, just 5 minutes. He said, "You've got 5 minutes." And so I went in, and Miles was pounding the speed bag at the time. He was literally, and so I had to wait. I wasn't going to interrupt the Miles Davis for anything. And I heard he was an irascible sort, so I wasn't going to interrupt. And so the guy was looking in through the door, and he was using up my time hitting the speed bag. And finally he stopped, and he says, "What you want?" He had vocal problems. He had some injury to it. So he said, "What you?" I said, and my voice, I've said this often, went up about 2 or 3 octaves. And I said, Mr. Davis, which was the stupidest thing I've ever. Mr. Davis. I said, I'm a photographer, and I've been photographing jazz musicians for years, and I would love to add you to, please let me take your picture. And he said, "Well, why?" I said, "Well, I've been photographing. I've got such a wonderful collection of artists." And he said, "Oh, who you got?" And I was like, oh, like a deer caught in headlights. And I, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, where I was just seeing when he went into that jail, and he was seeing all the calculations in front of him, going over the computer calculations in front of him as he was thinking. Literally, it happened to me that one time. And I literally prioritized on a list all the jazz musicians I had photographed, thinking that if I said the wrong person, Miles would say, "Hey, take a hike," you know. And so I said, "Who has he played with?" And I went, "Oh, I photographed Mingus and Dizzy and then he goes, and I listed 3 or 4 others. You know, I thought the pantheon of jazz. And he goes, "They ain't shit." And I was literally turning on my heels to leave, but he said, "Take all the pictures you want." And this is one of the pictures. So I spent every night with him that entire he was playing at Falls Mall. I went and and went every night and sat in the audience and went backstage every night, printed the pictures, made prints for him, took prints down, was one of the great weeks of my entire life. And he's probably the one artist in all the world that I have sort of designed my career after was Miles Davis. And so spending the time with him was really wonderful.
That's great. Fabulous story. So we're going to listen to Miles now. Before we move to music, any other questions? Okay, this is from the album, The Great Second Quintet, with Wayne, Herbie, Tony, and Ron Carter. This piece is called Fall. Wayne Shorter composition.
Our next piece is from the Like Children album, and it's dedicated.
All right. Great Miles Davis. Incredible. Any comments? Any? Nope. All right. Why don't you introduce our next?
Who is up next? Who is up next?
It is Thundercat.
Oh, okay. All right. This is as we've sort of quickly gone through the history. We'll get more into it a little bit as was for some of the other people, but this is the more current. This is done just a few years ago. This is Tony Smith. He played. I've known him for years and years and years and photographed him several times in my studio, and he's used the photographs, but this was more recently, and it's a more recent style. He teaches at Berklee School of Music, and he played mostly with Lou Reed. I knew him for a lot of his work with Lou Reed, and he teaches jazz drumming at Berklee School of Music, but this is a little bit different. We did the sort of normal photographs that he needed for his promotional work in his studio. And then I asked him if I could try something. And this is a technique that I use quite often, that I invented myself and use it in order to show movement, show when we call ourselves still photographers, but very often the subject matter requires or asked for emotion. And so this is a way of using hot lights, the kind of lights you use for, say, video or filmmaking, and strobe in order to freeze the strobe freezes the picture, and the hot lights causes the blur. And so this was Tony. And like I said, I don't think he liked the photographs. He wanted sort of the standard stuff in the beginning. And so, but I kept showing it to him, and he eventually, I think, came around, and I think he uses this a little bit in his promotional work. But he's local, like I said, teaches at Berklee, and I have tried to make sure that not only have I chased a lot of the sort of, as you've seen, more well-known musicians, but I've also made a real point of getting local talent, because that's where the music really is, where it really is now.
Okay. This piece is an older piece of his from around 40 years ago when he was with the Jan Hammer group. Hard to find his music. He hasn't recorded
No,
quite a bit.
yeah.
Mostly teaching and
Mhm.
a few YouTube concerts, and went with Jan Hammer instead of Lou Reed.
Right.
Okay.
To Andy and our road crew. And the piece is titled Topeka.
got to really pay attention to the expressive drumming that you heard in that amazing. He's been a friend for a very, very long time. I've known his wife even longer, and it's a real pleasure to. He came to an exhibition of mine of jazz musicians this past winter, and it was really good to see him again.
Any questions? Any questions?
Hi, this is not relevant to, is it Tommy? Tommy Smith?
Tony.
It's Tony Smith, okay.
Tony Thunder Smith.
Tony Thunder Smith. It's amazing drumming.
Yes,
Reminds me like a predecessor to Omar Hakim. Anyway, I have a completely different thought. It occurred to me to write to my friend Donna Paul, who did a lot of jazz photography in Boston when she lived here. And I just wrote, she's in Italy now, and I just wrote her and I said, do you know Lou Jones, the photographer? And she writes, for many years, of course. He used to do, I assisted him once in his studio. Now he's doing amazing work in Africa. I marvel how he has done all that he has done in racist Boston, working in the 80s. Donna Paul.
I remember her well, and she has been paying attention to my Pan Africa project work for quite some time now, and we worked together years and years ago. So you're absolutely right. It's wonderful that thank you for reaching out to her.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm going to send a copy of this Zoom. I can do that, Bill, right, later on?
Yeah.
I can
send and also it will be on YouTube probably by the weekend.
Okay, so if you can let me know how to do that, I'll give it to her, because she'll definitely want to see this, Lou.
Thank you so much. Right. So this is I think you're seeing on the screen, you're seeing the inimitable Carmen McRae, and this was again one of those stalking situations where I got her between sets and convinced her to let me photograph her, and then I picked her up at a hotel in Boston here, and she was giving me a very, very short period of time to photograph, and you can tell she was not all that anxious, but I convinced her. In those days, as those photographers who are online here also know, photography was harder in being able to get proper exposure. So I asked her if she wouldn't mind coming out, because the hotel room was horrible. It was just really too dark to get any good pictures. And so I asked her if this was the winter in Boston. And for those of you who has spent any time here, you know the horrible. So you can see how she is wrapped up in her fur coat and gloves and everything, which I hated the fact that, and she wasn't going to even open the collar a little bit, she wrapped up in her. But anyway, she sat, this is, I think, right in Copley Square. So she sat on the bench and paid very little attention to me, and was not happy at all being in that situation. But I got good pictures, and loved the fact that she gave me the time. The reason that in those days, it was much easier to get close to the jazz musicians than it is now. You can't get close to them, most of them anymore. And so I could get them between sets and things like that, and talk to them very, and they were also a little bit more amenable to the act of being recorded for posterity by photographers. And so so she said yes, and I picked her. I literally went right to her hotel room and took her outside.
And she's not wearing a hat.
That's right. That's right.
Speaks volumes.
That's
yeah. This is a piece She wrote the lyrics to this. You'll recognize the tune. Man, that was a dream.
I dreamed of a life that was pure and true. I dreamed of a job only I could do. One man beside me, we'd be a team. Man, that was a dream. I dreamed it was music I had to play. I dreamed when I played, I would play my way. Two fascinating children, boo-boo and toot. Dreams, that was a feud. All through life, I'd be true. Fortune would come my way. Struggling and getting by, trying to never lie, meaning exactly what I say. I dreamed I had fame and a life sublime. I dreamed I made prints on the sands of time. Smack dab in the spotlight, bathing his beam. Man, that was my dream. All through life, I'd be true. Fortune would come my way. Struggling and getting by, trying to never lie, meaning exactly what I say. I dreamed I had fame and a life sublime. I dreamed I made prints on the sands of time. Smack dab in the spotlight, bathing its beam. Man, that was my dream. Man, that was my dream. Man, that was my dream.
To talk. Carmen McRae.
We're going to do two songs for you written by Rogers and Hart.
Oops, I'm sorry. Okay. A little more, need a few more hands here. Great Carmen McRae. It's a great
Excellent,
story.
excellent. Wonderful.
You're listening to the Cambridge Hot Club, and everything is recorded and will be uploaded in the next few days to YouTube. And if you just send me your email, I can email you the playlist. Most of the playlist is on Spotify. Some of it was on vinyl, the Dizzy Gillespie and John Coltrane that we heard. We're going to go to Bostonia now. The now.
Yes, 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 yes.
Why don't you introduce this? Okay. Donnell Fox. Let me just switch over. One second, please. You can talk about Donnell Fox.
Well, Donnell is a local musician. I met him many, many, many years ago at the behest of a very dear friend who said I had to chase him down and photograph him. He's a godsend to the Boston area, and this is and we have been friends ever since. I've photographed him many, many, many times. He's used a lot of my photographs on his CDs and in his promotion, and I was able to actually drive down the Mass Pike and see one of his photographs up on the WGBH screen down there. He's a composer, pianist, does very eclectic music, mostly that of his own sort. But this is in my last studio. I'm in a studio now in East Boston, but this is my big, big, big studio in South End. And like I said, so I had a piano. This is my mother's piano that I practiced piano on for years, and I dragged it all the way into the studio and photographed him, and he's used this picture often. Being able to include local artists is a huge part of the enormous collection of photographers. You're only seeing the tip of the iceberg here, but becoming friends with him and seeing his creative process over the years has really enriched my approach to how to photograph jazz musicians in general, but jazz musicians in particular. And I cherish his friendship to this day.
Here's Danelle. Mr. Sims.
How do you get to that?
Maybe those drugs.
It just seems inconceivable that anyone could do that. But
on piano, Donnell Fox, Warren Wolf on vibraphone, John Lockwood on bass, and drums, Terry Lee Carrington. A full Boston, Massachusetts contingent.
That's right. That's right.
Any questions?
Those asking about technique, that was in a very large studio, my old studio, available light. I had huge clear story windows way up 15 feet in the and it's all available light. That was the technique I was using in those days, and that was a flare from a mistake that was in, and I kept it in. The printer who printed the huge print erased it and made a wonderful picture without the flare, and I went in and saw the picture and said, "Oh my God, I wanted the flare. Put it back in. Put it back in." He was really disappointed in all the effort he had put in to make a perfect expose. I wanted the flare.
Before we move on to more music, let's look at, this is a favorite photograph of mine, of yours.
Excellent, excellent.
This is just a great, great photo.
This is we've talked about the we've talked about the different techniques of how I've convinced different people. I will do a little bit more of that in a few of the others, but also this is, as the collection has gotten quite large. This is a few years ago, this is several years ago, but the collection has gotten so people started to know that I had all of these photographs of jazz musicians, and this is Rashid Ali, and an assistant of mine knew him. Her roommate or something like that was knew him, or was his daughter, or something like that. It was a very, very kinship connection there. And I said, "Oh my God, please contact him and ask me." And so I went down to New York and photographed him, not only in his studio and outside, but I took him down the street to get a little bit of the flavor of New York. I photographed him in several locations, and this was one of the pictures that I did of Rashid Ali. Is this the whole thing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. There it is. There it is. And so I wanted something that said New York. He played with everybody. He was a drummer that played with everybody, and I wanted the real flavor of New York to be in the picture. So this is one of the pictures I did. But this came about, like I said, in a more sort of organic technique of how the collection started to have its own weight, and people started to seek me out in order to be able to get photographs of some of the better known people.
And this is Rashid, right around the corner from Ali's Alley.
That's right.
But you can tell this is the 21st century Soho.
That's right.
not the 20th century Soho.
Right.
And this is one of his later recordings from 2006. This is the title track of his record, Judgment Day, composed by Lawrence Clark on tenor, Drew Main Smith on trumpet, Greg Murphy on piano, and Joris Teep on the bass. And well, from the 60s until his death, he put out a lot of great stuff. This is one of the lesser known, but it's a great piece. This is the title track from a 2 CD set, Judgment Day. That is entitled Judgment Day, the title track from Rashid Ali's mid 2006 release. Lawrence Clark composed that. He played tenor, Jumaine Smith on trumpet, Greg Murphy piano, and Joris Teep on the bass. We are now going to listen to or visit a Boston native, the great Roy Haynes.
Yes, you talk about him being a local. This is he is from a wonderful local Boston family, but he's spread out and become a jazz luminary. I think he's still with us. He's still alive. I stopped showing a lot of these photographs many years ago, especially in my portfolio and to students, because they had no idea. So many of them had passed away. They had no idea who Miles Davis was or Dizzy Gillespie, etc. So, but for the jazz aficionados, this is. But Roy is still with us, and amazing. This is the photograph I took in Kansas City, just down the street from the Jazz Museum. I chased him and a few other well-known jazz musicians to one of the festivals at the Jazz Museum several years ago, and called them and harassed them for weeks before the festival, letting them know that I was coming to be there in Kansas City and would like to be able to photograph them. So this was Roy. I talked to him on the phone a couple of times, actually, and he was very amenable to being photographed. And when I got there, he tried everything he could to avoid me, and he just kept chasing away. I'll do that. I'll you later. And finally, I trapped him. Now, this is if you look at the whole photograph, I scouted this location days before I actually did it, and this is a complete fabrication. This is what is the director, Robert Altman, did a film called Kansas City years before this, and this area which was at one time one of the most important places in jazz, thriving. Just you couldn't walk down without bumping other people's shoulders in this area, and now is almost completely abandoned. The storefronts were all abandoned, but Altman went back to do the film in the actual location where the film was about, and so this is a set. This is literally everything in this photograph is phony. Haircut, 35 cents, please. So it was done for the time and everything. Paseo, nothing. But I love the fact that being sort of like Alfred Hitchcock, and put myself in the photograph with the Jones Barbershop, and so he was once I got him trapped, and we walked down the street to this place. I think he had no idea why I wanted him in the doorway, but to this day, we bonded over this, and like I said, the set, almost the entire street was still a phony set for Robert Altman's film, but I was able to photograph Roy Haynes in this picture and in this scene and a few other people in and around the Jazz Museum in Kansas City, and I just love this photograph.
That's a terrific story. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go back to the 1950s now. This is a piece Roy did in Sweden. It's entitled Hagness. Maybe that's the Swedish pronunciation of his last name. Sahib Shihab is on saxophone. I don't know the rhythm section. It's a local, but yeah, Roy Haynes, extraordinary drummer.
It's extraordinary.
Unbelievable. We've got 80, 90 years of his music.
Mm.
He's still with us in his
That's
late
right.
90s.
That's right.
Roy Haynes. From the 1950s, on saxophone, Sahib Shihab. Rhythm section, the rest of the rhythm section, a pianist and bass player. I do not know. They were just local Swedish musicians. The great Roy Haynes. Any questions, comments before we move along to our next? So, this is Sun Ra in a kitchen. Is that your kitchen?
It is a kitchen. No, it is. For those people who have been around a little while, know an area in Boston called SoWa, south of Washington Street, which has sort of become the de facto kind of artist area. There's lots of artists. I don't know if there's lots of things, and so they have a first Friday every month. But this is long before that. This is where my first big studio was on one street over from this. They were the big lofts that are down there, and I had several floors of one of the buildings, and where my studio was, where I lived. Nobody was supposed to know I lived there, but. And I think I kept it relatively good secret, except amongst friends. But anyway, a couple of other artists lived one block over, and because the spaces were so big, one of them had a guy was building a phantasmagorical machine, very clever in that it took sounds, different sounds, keyboard sounds, et cetera, and translated them into different light qualities, different light sources and things. And the machine was huge. He codged together lots and lots of electric tubes and things like that rather than transistors. So the machine was huge and everything, but he loved Sun Ra, and he told Sun Ra he had this machine and that it was designed to relate to Sun Ra and his crazy idea of a community and everything. So they moved it around a little bit, and this was literally when Sun Ra was there to view the machine, and this was after some performance he did, and so this is probably like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. We partied all night, and the sun was coming up, and everybody had left the party, and he was just sitting there, and there was finally some sun coming in, and you see it's almost a complete silhouette, but this is one of my great pictures of this really stellar. And I think it represents a lot of what Sun Ra was about in his real life. And so this was, like I said, the progress of how my career was moving, photographing these musicians and finding different places to put them so that they were away from the bandstand, away from the things that they, of course, saw as their legacy, but by and large, I was hopefully contributing a little bit to their legacy and showing people what they actually look like.
No, it's a beautiful, beautiful photograph. One of the few we have of Sun Ra in civilian clothes.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. This is a piece he wrote. This is from late 50s, early 60s. It's called Space Loneliness.
Mm.
That's Sun Ra. Incredible. Any comments, questions? We've got a few people here. Let's see. Thank you, David. And yeah. So moving right along, we have Charles Mingus next up. So there's always lots of stories about Mr. Mingus. So how did you, convince this man for a photo? Let's see.
Well, this is sort of the culmination of the technique, like I said, of stalking these musicians. I realized that they were in constant demand between sets. This was back in the days when they didn't throw you out of the jazz workshop as soon as the set was over. They let you sit, and you could. So I realized that they would not talk to me. I was inconsequential. As they had fans, they had people who they knew, they had their promoters, they had their record people, etc. So I was not able to get a word in edgewise most of the time. So I had to devise a better technique. And so what I realized was I needed just a few minutes with them, or I wanted just a few minutes with them. And the only place where they weren't surrounded by people was in the bathroom. So I waited outside the bathroom until they just came out of the bathroom, and I caught them right outside the bathroom and started talking. I gave myself about 37 seconds to do my elevator speech and talk to them. He said, "Take all the pictures you want." I said, "No. I want to be able to, I want to have control. Please let me, I need you backstage, as I said before, or in my studio, whatever." And he said, "Call me tomorrow at the so-and-so hotel." And he said, "Keep calling. He says, you may have trouble, but keep calling." So he said, "And don't call early." And I didn't know what that meant, but I think I probably started calling around 11 o'clock in the morning. In those days, long before cell phones, you called the front desk, and I said, Mr. Charlie Mingus is in. He told me to call him. Please put me through. And the phone rang and rang and rang and rang and rang and rang. And finally I got, "What?" And I said, "Mr. Mingus?" So again, my voice probably went up, and I said, "You told me to call you, and we would arrange for me to take some pictures." And he said, "I'm sleeping. Call me later." What did that mean? So I waited a couple of hours, and I did the same thing. Called the front desk. They called up, rang. "What?" I said, "I'm calling again." He says, "Call me later." So I called a couple of hours later, and he said, "Come pick me up." So I didn't have any money. I had a little teeny tiny studio on the third floor of this brownstone in the South End. I had a very, very nice little teeny studio. And I walked all the way from the South End all the way to Back Bay, and emptied out my piggy bank for all the little quarters and dimes and nickels that I had. And I went upstairs, got him in his room. He put on his coat, put on his clothes. We came downstairs, got a cab out front, drove to my studio, paid the cab, and he went into the studio. And we were in fine fettle. We were getting along fine, just fine, until that moment when I had to walk him up to the third floor. And you can see he's doing about 350 pounds there. And so he goes, "You ain't got no elevator." And I went, "No, I'm sorry." And so he crutched it. Now, the backstory is that I was renting the top 2 stories from a film company, and I'm walking Charlie Mingus up to the third floor. And I was a god amongst the people from that moment on to see Charlie Mingus go all the way up. And I photographed him, but he wouldn't talk to me. He literally was so mad that he had put himself in that situation of having this inconsequential nobody convince him to come to the studio and make him walk up 3 stories. And so he just would not talk to me from that. But I put up lights, strobes here, big umbrellas, the whole thing in my studio. That's the brick wall behind him. And he asked if he could smoke, and I got pictures. I walked him back downstairs, put him in called a cab, put him in a cab, and never saw him again. But I realized quite months and months and months later that Mingus was every bit as genius as I thought he was at the time, and that he understood exactly what he was doing at that time. He wasn't going to become my friend as I was hoping. He didn't need a friend. He didn't need another fan. He was in the situation, and he didn't need to say anything. He was giving me exactly what I wanted, what I needed when that was photographs. And I got photographs, and they've been published on covers of magazines all over the place. And it's an amazing story in terms of my career and how much chutzpah I had to have in order to approach somebody of his stature in order to get a photograph. But like I said, and then again, it was generated. The photograph was generated in the act. The only thing, he wouldn't talk to me. I did handstands. I told him stories about me. I told jokes. He wouldn't say a word. It was just the most uncomfortable situation you can imagine. But he knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew exactly that he was giving me the gift of his photograph, and that's all I needed.
Beautiful. Incredible story. Incredible
Thank you.
story.
Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like Mr. Mingus. Of all the interviews and books
That's right.
and bios I have read, fits him to the T. And
Yeah.
actually, the selection I chose, the title typifies what you just said. This is called Black Bats and Poles. This is from his 1970s Changes records.
Wow.
With George Adams, Don Poland kills on this, and Jack Walrath, Mingus, Danny Richmond. And I never asked anyone. The song is called Black Bats and Poles, Poles.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the Poles fit in? But that's Mingus. Enjoy. That was called Black Bats and Poles. Great, great Charles Mingus. Any questions, comments? Ricky Ford grew up in Boston, lives in Paris. He's actually one of my first guests when we started the Cambridge Hot Club. My guest today is Lou Jones. I want to thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. This is an opportunity. You know, photographers are never in front of the camera or never heard from. We're supposed to be quiet and unseen. So, but this is an opportunity to have a captive audience and share some of my great loves, of course, the music, but most importantly, the visuals of these amazing artists. But this is Ricky Ford, and I met Ricky, I think he was around 14 years old. He was a phenom already when he was 14 years old. This is years and years ago, probably in Roxbury. Probably the first time I heard him play was at Wally's. If anybody here is old enough to remember Wally's, there's still a Wally's. It may have even reopened. I'm not sure about that, but it's on Mass Avenue, but it was across the street from where it is now, and it's one of the venerable Boston music venues, and it was still around until just around COVID. I'm not sure it's opened up. I heard it was supposed to.
It has reopened.
Okay.
And it is one of those Boston treasures.
Treasures, absolutely. But I probably heard him way back when it was across the street. And I followed him and followed him and followed him. And we danced around each other. And even though we knew each other well, I didn't get an opportunity to photograph him until more recently. As Bill said, he moved to France years and years ago and sort of stays there and comes back once in a while. And on one of those times a few years ago, I convinced him to come. And so the photograph is in my studio, but not in the actual studio. It's actually in the living room right next to my studio. That's like I said before, the piano that I learned to play piano on when I was very, very young is in my, it hasn't been tuned in years, but he sat, and this was lit. I have written the definitive book on what they call speed lights years ago, and so this was a speed light, and he brought his saxophone, and that's some of my photographs and photographs that my family has sent me over the years in the background. But he's right there, and I think he quite liked the picture once he saw it. I sent it to him after I did it, and he asked to be able to use it. So I think the session was successful. But as I said before, being able to photograph the local people is, and I guess he's certainly considered to be a local phenom.
That concept of speed light, I can see in the composition of his face, the brass on the horn, and even the beautiful black leather jacket.
Yes, that's exactly right.
You've got all those are so. You have multiple aspects focused.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was also, the speed light was bounced off of a very large white foam core card. So if you see how even the light is from top of his head to probably to the bottom of his hands, and more importantly, which the amateurs, and we're seeing all times of the denigration of good photography over the last few years, especially since cell phones have been introduced. This is lit, but if you notice, instead of a hot spot on horn, which is metal and shiny and reflective, you're getting this really wonderful, nice line, which you have to be able to. You can't create that with just a flash. You have to be able to use some other kind of device to spread the light and make it very, very, very even. But also, you see how it's mainly to photograph to spread the light over him evenly and add detail in those dark clothes, which would have, mostly with a flash, probably have gone mud. He's a great musician, and again, another great friend.
This is from one of his later records. It's called, composition is his. It's called Mabu Lala. Any questions? Oh, Francie has a question here. Let's.
Yes, thank you, Bill. Sir, completely off topic. In honor of the late great Ali, by any chance, I know you were in a different lane in your career development, but would you have loved to have been there in Zaire for the Rumble in the Jungle, which occurred 49 years ago this past Monday?
Well, I've photographed 13 Olympic Games, both summer and winter. So sports is a big thing, and I actually did photograph Ali when he did a demonstration match at the Heinz Auditorium. They put up a ring in the middle of the Heinz Auditorium, and people came in and were able to buy 3 rounds. I think it was 3 rounds with him. So several people did that, and I photographed that. So I photographed. So, but I guess that's not a real deal, you know. But certainly it would have. I just got back from Mozambique, which is very close to Zaire, but I guess Zaire is not around anymore. But very close to where Zaire used to be, and would have loved to have been able to photograph that kind of event.
I'm so glad that you came within arm's length distance of him.
Well, I have a great story. You talk about arm's length. It was even closer than that. I'm early in my career, you know, he was doing this demonstration, so I was able to go to the weigh-in. So that's a big sort of stupid ritual that's in boxing, where they sort of strip down to their shorts and bare-chested and everything, which the photographers love, you know, and they sort of stare at each other and make growling sounds and etc. And then they get weighed to see what they're going to be what weight they're going to be fighting at. Well, he came in, and whoever, I don't remember who he was fighting, but did his weigh in, and then Ali, in his inimitable way of being over the top and talking constantly and making his poems and everything, and the press, and I have sharp elbows, and I just completely wrangled myself really, really right up to the scale. I was right next to the scale, and I was photographing with a very short lens, wide angle lens, and I was staring right in Ali's face, you know, right next to the scale. And some journalist, not a photographer, but a journalist, said something very, very provocative, really rude to Ali. And the journalist was standing right next to me. I mean, shoulder to shoulder to me. And Ali was so incensed by what the person does that Ali came and threw a punch at this guy. And with a wide angle lens, he probably came within 6 inches of my lens. And I think I pissed myself a little bit. Because I thought I was going to get destroyed. I mean, it was the biggest fist I've ever seen, and it came within 6 inches of my lens, and it was very, very scary. So your point about that is well taken.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Francie.
Mhm.
Okay. This is one of Ricky Ford's more recent records called The Wailing Sounds of Ricky Ford. Mark Soskin piano, Jerome Harris bass, and Barry Altschul on the drums. And I encourage you to pick this record up. It's an interesting record. I do not know what Mabulala means, but most of the songs are play on words of his heroes. So, but I like to say that Mabulala. Ricky Ford, Mabu Lala. My guest tonight has been Lou Jones. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for.
This has been an entire pleasure. I never had the opportunity to sort of integrate the music and the photographs together like this. So this multimedia kind of thing is really works for me.
Good. Okay. Yeah, what a pleasure. I think I mentioned earlier in the program, first time seeing Lou's photographs, and they were spending my over 50 years listening to jazz music, looking at all the photos, most of them ingrained in my brain. These really do stand out. Beautiful stuff, just incredible stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any? We've got a lot of other music that on the playlist to take us out. Any particular person you want to hear before we?
I'd like to hear another Ricky, if you've got any.
Okay, yeah, got plenty of Ricky.
He's a favorite. I mean, you know, I know him so well. So,
Fancy?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you. Sir, I can't resist. I trust you're aware of the extraordinary African American inventor, draftsman, and patent holder of the 20th century, primarily, who was also a member of the original Edison's pioneers, Lewis Latimer, who had Commonwealth connections. Are you familiar with him, Mr. Jones?
I am not. No, I am not. Sorry.
That's okay. This year is his 175th arrival anniversary. And he's the individual responsible for the light switch, for the air conditioning duct system. And I could go on, but you have better things to listen to, like great music. But just in case, because he loved jazz, and he was such a pioneer, and he was also a poet. If you get a chance, because he has the Commonwealth connection, and bear in mind, please, that he started out cleaning floors in Thomas Alva Edison's original workshop and soared to the heights of American entrepreneurship and invention. I mean, he literally put the lights on, because even though Edison first developed the light, it was the light structure that Edison developed could only last for 9 days. It was Mr. Latimer who introduced the filament that allowed the sustainability, if you will, of the light source and the light emission. But with all that said, so if you get a chance, this is a big year for him. It's the 175th anniversary of his birth. It's the 75th anniversary of his transition. And it's the 35th anniversary of the saving of his original house in New York. So if you get a chance, if you're looking for a subject to position a story about, I humbly recommend for your consideration Lewis H. Latimer, and many of his papers are in the Schomburg collection. Enough said. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for schooling me. I really appreciate that. I'm going to look him up.
Thank you.
Okay, let's listen to a few tracks from Ricky Ford. The excuse me. Two pieces from Ricky Ford. We heard Paris Fringe and Fur. Ricky Ford with Mark Soskin, Barry Altschul, and the bassist was Jerome Harris. Terrific stuff. Yeah, I want to thank you all for sticking around tonight, and I want to thank you, especially thanks Lou Jones for coming in. He had to step out, but lots of great questions and insights. Keitha Lynn has asked, Burst Music Series, Cambridge Hot Club. Question. All of the above. Years and years ago, my son and I started a concert series. It's almost a decade, and we called it Burst Music Series. So I've just kept that name. This is the Cambridge Hot Club, and routinely I'm here Monday and Wednesdays, 7 to 10, the first and the third Wednesdays of each month. So I'm back in 2 weeks. Occasionally I do extra shows, and there's a musician, a drummer who trying to figure out now when he can come up, but I'll post it on, I'll send out an email once I know whether Kamal can come up or not. But if not, I'll be back in 14 days, the first and third Wednesdays.
Mondays and Wednesdays?
Pardon me?
The first and third Mondays and Wednesdays?
No, just Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
I misspoke. You think of the first and third days of the week of Monday and Wednesday, but it is the first and third Wednesdays of each month. And since I do these podcasts out of my home, if the right person comes in, right musician is visiting and wants to come in, and there are a couple of musicians I'm talking to now, if we can work out their dates when they visit. And YouTube at Jazz Boston. Yes, it's a little confusing. Sometimes we call it Cambridge Hot Club. Sometimes we call it Boston Hot Club. So on YouTube, it is under Jazz Boston, who supports this endeavor. Okay, before we close off, I'm going to play a little more Ricky Ford. Piece called In Walked Bud. And that was In Walk Bud, composed by Thelonious Monk. And that was Ricky Ford. Jackie Byard on the piano. Who else is in the band? Milt Hinton on bass and Ben Riley on drums. Superb, superb. Yeah, we started the night off with Milt Jackson, so I think we'll close with Milt Jackson. It has a story behind it. Yeah, Lou had to go home, so he thanks the great audience, and I'll be back either next Wednesday, probably not until November 15th. Just never know. But I'm here every first and third Wednesday from 7 to 10. My Gmail is in the chat, so please send me a line, and I'll let you know what's going on. Also in the chat is the Boston Hot Club. And so we're closing.
Hey, Bill.
Yes, hey, Cliff.
Great show.
Thank you.
I was here for part of it. I was listening actually in the other room. That's why I was here twice, but it was worth every single moment. And I had on these Bose headphones so I could hear everything you're doing, even though I was vacuuming. Good. It was great to have Lou here. Man, that was some stuff you just don't hear.
Yeah.
Those kinds of stories behind the scenes. But wow, what a life he's had.
Yeah. And just, chasing those musicians, Charlie Mingus story. And if you look on his website, I mean, he's been all over the world.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of work in Japan, and very solid. Very, very cool.
Super. Well, great show. Do you want to sign off, or do you want to just play one more song and roll us out of here?
I'm going to sign off. I'm going to say goodnight, and I'm going to play. We started the night with Milt Jackson.
We're going to end up with Milt. Is that what you're telling us? End up where we started?
Exactly. Milt Jackson was one of the first, I think one of his first two jazz heroes. And he met Milt in the 80s, but had been devoted to him for about 20 years. And this is a Milt Jackson record, Milt Jackson and Sonny Stitt. And Lou told me he worked hard trying to get photographs from Sonny Stitt. And I think you just think about that. You know, there are people who are hired to take photographs at concerts or sporting events. And then you got the freelance artists like Lou, who looked for his heroes. And the Mingus story was great. So
I was just going to comment on that. It's like 3 flights of story. I'm not talking to you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Great story. Oh, thanks, Bill. Thanks for it's great bringing Lou in and getting another perspective on all the back end stuff of these lives that we hear through our ears and maybe through our eyes at a distance, but it's great to live through him vicariously, and puts a human face to all this stuff, for better or worse.
And Cliff, thank you as always for your engineering, your expertise, throwing those lifelines every now and then when I trip over my own big log feet.
It's your heart we're here for, Bill, not your technical prowess. We love your heart, we love your brain, and I'm here ad infinitum. Everybody, Francie, take care. Rain, if that's how we say your name, thanks for being here, and everybody else. There you are. Look at.
Yeah, it's Rainy.
Rainy.
Yeah, you got it right. So thank you. It was awesome.
Super. Well, thanks for popping on the screen. And
I'll definitely join again.
Yeah.
And
now, Rainy, do you know Lou or?
I do. Yeah, I used to work with him on the Pan Africa project. And we're still close. But I saw him post this, and I love jazz, so this was just awesome.
Yeah, no, actually, I heard your story earlier in the show. So anybody who missed it, that's who we're talking about. They were talking.
Oh,
yeah,
I missed it.
I think I heard that. Didn't I hear that, Bill?
Yes, you did.
I did. So there you are. You're famous now.
Maybe I signed on too late. I might have missed it. I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, and the thing about YouTube is because they played such great known music tonight, it's possible YouTube will crash it. So
Yeah, that's true.
get after it quick. It'll be up in what, a day or two, Bill, and then try to see it like toward the middle of the week or so. And everybody else, I hope you guys get to hear this and see this. It's a great show. Thanks, Bill, for putting it together.
You're welcome.
Brady, nice to meet you.
It's a
Take care.
pleasure.
Nice to meet you also. See you again.
Okay.
We'll be
And
here.
don't forget to support the music. There's lots of great clubs in Boston. And after 4 years of sitting in this room, we can go here. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks, Cliff, Rini, and Milt Jackson and Sonny Stipp. Little postlude. Good night.